Hey there, salon owners. If you're here, I know you're someone who is serious about taking your salon and your life to the next level. I've got some exciting things to share with you today. If you love the tips and strategies we talk about in this podcast, I've created something that will take your journey to the next level. A weekly email series packed with actionable business tips designed specifically for salon owners. These emails are like your personal coach showing up in your inbox every week with the exact steps you need to level up your business. From tracking metrics that matter most to creating systems that simplify your life, I'll walk you through the strategies that have helped countless salon owners, including me, growing a thriving business. Here's how you subscribe. It's super easy to join. Just head to www.opulentbeautypro.com and sign up for free. That's right, it's free. One tip every week, straight to your inbox, no strings attached. And as we speak of growth, for those of you ready to go all in, let me tell you about the Salon Owner Blueprint program. This is the ultimate roadmap for salon owners looking to scale their business, lead with confidence, and hit those big revenue goals. It's packed with strategies to help you master your finances, grow your team, and attract the dream clients who fuel your vision. Whether you're just getting started or looking to refine your systems, this program will give you everything you need to thrive. Want to learn more? Visit www.opulentbeautypro.com/blueprint and take the first step towards your next breakthrough. I also want to give a quick shout out to our exclusive podcast subscription. This is where you dive even deeper into the topics we touch on here. As a subscriber, you'll get bonus episodes, behind the scene content, the insider access to my personal strategies for growing a successful salon business. For just $7.99 a month, you'll get unparalleled insights that you can start using immediately to see results. It's like having a business coach in your pocket. So here's what I want you to do. Subscribe to my weekly email list at www.opulentbeautypro.com. Check out the Salon Owner Blueprint program if you are ready to make big moves. And don't forget to subscribe to the Elevate Insider for exclusive game-changing content. Remember, success is in your hands, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Hello and welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Nowakowski. I am a salon owner, educator, mindset, and leadership coach that helps salon owners go from overwhelmed and burnt out to motivated and empowered. It is my mission to help you systemize your business, generate more profit, and create a career that you are absolutely in love with. Join us every week to learn about the small shifts you can make to elevate your business regarding mindset, marketing, social media, business systems, and so much more. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Elevate Podcast. We are going to be chatting about misclassification and talking about setting up your business for success. I'm so excited you're here, Omar. Nice to meet you. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and kind of let everyone know who you are and what you do?
My name is Omar Herrera. I'm the vice president of Taxco, Desdown Corporation, doing business as Taxco. We've been in business probably about 50 years. I've been with the company now 19 years. What we do is we specialize in accounting, bookkeeping, taxes for small business owners. People like what you were talking about, small hair salons, trucking companies. We have every type of business you can imagine, but they're all small businesses. That's our niche. And years ago, we also had our own payroll company, which we sold off. So very knowledgeable on how that works. We partner with ADP on that now. But you name the problems, I've seen it probably this week. You'd be shocked how many issues people get into with this whole 1099 thing. They think they're doing an employee a solid and you're helping them out. And then later you get a letter in the mail or a call, and next thing you know, you're having to defend yourself in court. We probably get served here for a lot of our clients. We also are their agent for service. At least 5 times a week, we're getting a lawsuit served for one of our clients where somebody, usually a labor board thing, is upset. You know, they have an axe to grind and they turn around and they sue. and it can create a lot of stress for business owners.
And this is one of the things that I also see a lot of salon owners do is that they don't want to pay for a CPA and someone to truly set their business up legally because they feel like they can't afford it. And the thing that you just shared right now is just proof in the pudding that like you can't afford not to pay somebody who knows what they're doing because these lawsuits do happen all the time. I literally was just audited
Oh, I'm
by
sorry.
no, it turned out fine because I do everything legally in my business, but it was a mess. I only had a few 1099s, and those were independent educators coming into my salon that I paid over $600 to
Yeah.
teach classes. But the amount of information that I had to give all my bank statements, I had to give all my 1099 information, all of my employee information. It was a nightmare. And I can't even imagine if I had things wrong, what that would have turned into because they're not messing around and they're looking to collect money in any way that they can. And also to ensure that you are doing things legally in your business to protect employees. So, Lena, do you want to kind of ask the questions to get the information out that we really want for today?
Yeah, Omar. So we've been talking about the trend that we're seeing here in California that is also affecting other places that have similar legislation with salons being outdated with how they're classifying their employees. And, I've picked your brain on a million conversations about this, trying to find the loophole of how we could also do this because it's very hard to be competitive and to attract new employees with having to tell them that we pay perhaps a slightly lower commission rate and trying to explain to them, like a new language they're learning, what we do cover as their employers. And so I kind of like wanted to first start with when I called the labor commissioners and I was trying to ask them the questions about like who I could classify as a 1099, it sounded like I could potentially classify my employees as a 1099 because I didn't require them to work a specific set schedule. They could come and go as they had work or clients. There was a bunch of things. So
Yeah.
did you work for the IRS?
I never worked for the IRS. I've always worked in the private sector. I did work in criminal defense for like 10 years.
Okay,
and we
so I
do RICO cases,
misunderstood.
completely unrelated, but to just kind of help guide you. And a lot of times when you're calling these government agencies, what's hard for business owners and even for people like myself who are professionals, depending on who you get on the phone, you may get different answers because, again, the person answering the phone is just a customer service rep. They're not the actual auditor. Right? You don't really deal with an auditor until you get to the point like with Patricia, who just got audited. You're dealing with somebody who's a revenue agent who's going to bear down into that detail that when you call up on the phone, yeah, sure, sounds good. Yeah, good luck with that. A lot of times they're just trying to get you off the phone, and it's unfortunate and it hurts. But just to keep it specific to your industry, in the hair salon industry, there's something called the Borello test. And that's not just for the hair salon industry, it's for every industry. The Borello test was a California Supreme Court ruling years ago where they basically said you have to look at various factors to determine whether someone is an employee versus an independent contractor. It's also referred to as the ABC test. Different states have it, but basically it's about control, where the money comes in. Even if you tell people, hey, no, it's cool, you can come in whenever you want, the reality is for most hair salons, if you're the one processing the payment and it's going into your bank account, it's an employee, okay? Versus where if you actually rented somebody a chair, like they used to in the old days, hey, here's your chair, you pay me $2,000 a month or whatever for that chair. Well, that person's running their own business. That means they're processing their own credit cards, they're taking their own payments. And there are still people that do that, but you really have to have that separation where the money's not going in the main location's account and then going to a second. At that point, that's an employee, at least here in California. Okay, so there's a couple different factors aside from how the money goes. Are you training them? I have a 20-point checklist here on my screen I can show you of what the IRS looks at. And like, for example, do they have a profit and loss? Did they invest into the business? Do they work for more than one location? Are there services offered to the public? Like what Patricia said, I had educators come in. That's not an employee. That's an independent contractor. They're offering a service also that's different from what you offer, right? The minute they're doing the same thing you are, and it's at your location and money's going through you, they're going to be categorized here, at least in California, as an employee. And if you do end up with a IRS audit, then they're probably going to be classified as employees as well. Okay, although usually most of these problems start with the EDD, okay, and the Labor Board Commission. Okay, the IRS usually will piggyback off of them. Everybody's afraid of the IRS, but in these cases, it's usually the Labor Board and the EDD. And it's not like they got a team of people going to hair salons and, hey, who's on payroll, who isn't. The way that most of the time business owners get in trouble on this is that you have to let somebody go. Okay, it's just not working out. They think they're an employee. Well, I can get unemployment, and then they go file a claim. And when their Social Security doesn't show up on the quarterly tax filing, which is the DE9, to get too technical, that's when, they send a letter, and now they want their pound of flesh, right? They want to make sure, why weren't you paying payroll tax on this? And that's normally how these things happen here in California. Then later, if it's a bigger situation and you do get audited for the IRS, usually at that point, they could hit you with misclassification as well. But they're rarely the first ones in on this issue. It's usually California. Back in 2020, they passed what was called Assembly Bill 5, AB 5, and that shook up your industry because they actually had allotted money to where they were going to put together a task force going from business to business, specifically targeting the trucking industry. That's where Uber and Lyft also sued to get themselves removed from that part. But really, they were targeting the trucking industry. But all these other industries kind of fell in line. Well, what happened in 2020? We had COVID. The money went missing. Everybody went on unemployment. So they never actually followed through with the task force. And here we are 5 years later. They've yet to send somebody out to go door knocking to see if you have an independent contractor versus employee. However, the rule is still there. They are really employees if they're under your control, if you're training them, if they don't have a business license, okay? If you're truly just charging them rent, then they're just going to pay you the rent and nothing else. Their money can't go through your bank account. It's them just paying you rent. I'm renting this out. They handle their own business. And then I'll touch a little bit on what Patricia says. They think they're going to make more money, but the reality is then now they have to calculate their expenses. And whatever is left over, you're automatically subject to self-employment tax, just like any business owner who's not set up as a corp. And most of these individuals who are doing hair or personal trainers, that type of people, they're not set up properly. So they're not a corporation. They can't put themselves on payroll. And, $50,000 of income is now $7,500 automatically in self-employment tax, not to mention whatever tax bracket they come in. Okay. So I can go on this stuff all day, but the reality is the rules have always been there. It's just the enforcement of it. And where if someone wants to do things right and really grow their business, and it is hard because everybody wants to be paid as an independent contractor when they've never been on the business owner side. Let them be a sole proprietor a couple of years, they'll come running back and say, hey, please put me on payroll. I owe $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to the IRS and I haven't paid it. Because the reality is when they're on payroll, there's taxes being taken out every time they get paid that goes towards their year-end bill. And the biggest thing is there's no self-employment tax. That 15.3% self-employment tax, if somebody's not set up as a corporation and on payroll, is going to basically dig into whatever is left. Somebody makes $100,000 a year and they're single, no kids, about $45,000 of that's going to go in taxes between the state and the government. So they're not making $100,000 a year. They're making, if they're lucky, $50,000, money's already spent. And at the end of the year, all you have is a tax bill, and it's a real tough situation. So it is one of those things where you're actually protecting the employee by putting them on payroll. It's just getting them to understand that the grass is not greener on the other side. If they're going to be of their own business, be your own business, set up a corporation, put yourself on payroll. But then at that same time, you got to put the money out for the retail location, the investment that comes to setting up a nice shop like you guys have over there, Hair Boss Salon. That is not easy to do, and it's going to cost money. And for a lot of people, if they don't have that to set up or they don't have the discipline to do it themselves, they're going to make more money just being on payroll and just being a high earning hairstylist without having to worry about that stuff.
What are some of the consequences that can happen if you are, let's just say, busted as an owner? And then also like consequences, I know we talked about the pay, but the consequences to the stylist in comparison from being like a 1099 to an employee.
The consequences for the employer, if you are ever in an audit caught of misclassifying employees, okay, if it's the IRS, okay, the money that you should have taken out of their check, that's the withholding. There's withholding. There's also some other taxes, FICA, all this stuff, right, that they take out, a Medicare tax. But the withholding itself, the money that they've earned that would go normally the IRS to hold, and at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you get some back or you don't. That trust amount, that's what it's referred to. Employer is now responsible for it, and 100% penalty plus interest. So if you should have withheld at the end of the year from this person, let's just say it's 10,000, use a round number on their federal taxes, and you didn't hold it and remit it through a payroll company, and they bust you, now you're responsible for $20,000 for that employee. And if you have 5 employees, that's 100,000. Take 100, and then they add interest. It'll ruin a business. And I've seen it happen many times in the trucking industry, machine shop industries, but trucking especially, they get with those guys all the time. They're an easy hit, and that's it. You're out of business. Next thing you know, they're putting the business under their kid's name or something. And now the EDD has ways of tracking that. It doesn't work anymore. They'll know it's the same people, and they'll shut it down. So that's on the IRS side. On the state side, there's also penalties and interest. Even though the withholding is actually money that's supposed to be taken from the check of the employee, since it didn't get taken and you didn't take it, they don't go after the employee for it. They go after the business owner for it. I call it the death shot. That's what puts you out of business. EDD and sales tax, but that's a whole other conversation. People don't remit that, get put in jail for that. Now, for the employee, the consequence is, they're not taking any taxes, is that 90% of these people who are not truly business owners and they don't have real expenses to deduct, when they do their taxes, they're going to have the self-employment tax, plus there was no withholding on any of the money that they took. They are automatically going to have a high tax bill, and they're not going to have it. Even if somebody makes $40,000, $50,000 a year in Southern California or most places, you're not making a ton of money. And at the end of the year, you got to pay $20-something thousand between federal and state. What are you going to do? You're going to put yourself on a payment plan, but that only works for a couple of years. And next thing you know, in California is not big on payment plans for anybody. Next thing you know, you're not making any money. You can't open a bank account. They're having to operate in cash. It will ruin their lives. They just don't realize it at that time. But the reality is, for most employees who think they're better off as independent contractors, they're not. They'd have to be making, $500,000, $300,000 a year, in which case they'd be their own corporation and they put themselves on payroll and follow the tax rules, just like most business owners do. The last consequence for the employee, they don't think about this, is when you need to qualify for buying a car, anything, you're not on payroll, you don't get a W-2, okay? Which means, how are you going to qualify for anything credit related in your life? Well, they're going to want to see your profit and loss. And when they see that there's no expenses, they're going to be like, okay. I'm pretty sure if you guys ever dealt with any type of home loan, self-employed people, which are people who are truly business owners that are not on a corporation, they have no W-2, it is much harder to get any type of home loan if you're self-employed. There's only specific banks that deal with it because the banks know that this person has a tax bill at the end of the year if they're making money. They'd much rather deal with a business owner who's set up as a corp, on payroll, with withholding, with W-2 wages. Most of the banks will be happy to give you a loan if there's enough income. Where with the other side, you won't qualify for anything. That's just reality, unless there's a rare person that's out there that get that. The third consequence for most people that they don't know about is that people that are actually self-employed, Schedule C sole proprietors, are audited at a much higher rate than S corps and even C corps. Just audited at a higher rate, because if you truly are a business owner and somebody hasn't advised you that you should be probably an S corp in most situations, rare cases maybe a C, then they know it's an easy hit. It's going to be an easy audit. They're commingling funds. They don't have a business account set up. It's their personal account. And these auditors, they're just going after easy hits. It is much easier to go after that business owner than somebody that's set up properly.
Yeah, I can tell you from personal experience, I was an independent stylist when I was purchasing my home, and it was a nightmare. It was so hard to get a loan, and the process was insane because no one wanted to give me a mortgage because of, and I made great money, but it was very difficult. It was a very difficult process. Also, I loved the fact that you talked about the auditing. No one wants to get audited by the IRS. It is something that is so stressful, and 9 times out of 10, they find something that is not in your favor. Because if you are an independent, you really don't know what you're doing.
Everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them, though. And that's the mindset.
Yeah, I'll be fine. My friend does it this way. It happens all the time. And you're absolutely right, where when you're dealing with looking at things like a business owner, and that's what's hard is, and it's not just your industry. I deal with every type of industry. I hire accountants here. Every once in a while, somebody says, I'd love to work with you, but can I work from home as an independent contractor? No. And trust me, every industry is the same. Or they get to a couple people that worked here over the years. Oh, we're going to go start our own business. Okay, great. Let me know how it goes. 6 months later, hey, I made a mistake. Yeah, okay. Well, it's okay. You've been replaced. Because it is hard to run any type of business. I don't care what it is. They're all hard, right? And everything depends on being organized, being able to lead a team. That they don't teach in school. Some of it you just got to have that ability. And at the same time, you got to be in compliance, because here in California, we haven't even talked about the big thing, workers' comp. That's the main reason a lot of people try to avoid putting people on payroll, is because workers' comp costs. Okay. But I can tell you from other industries, insurance companies are already ahead of the game. So they'll ask to see your profit and loss before they give you the insurance policy, or when they renew. They'll audit the financial, and they'll basically, if you have, like, let's say $500,000 in subcontractors, they will add that to the payroll on your quote, because they don't really believe all those people are in the actual employees, especially like in some of the rougher businesses where they got people that maybe not have social securities and they're paying them as subcontractors, which the rules still apply to them. So the insurance companies actually add that back into the cost of your quote. And they could give you a quote, but at the end of the year, they do an audit. And then, okay, well, you had more subcontractors than you said you did. That's the other thing, that California has one of the highest workers' comp costs in the United States. But that's the other thing that sometimes employees don't think about. They just think, oh, the lights, the rent, that's all paid for. If it wasn't for me, we wouldn't be making any money. No, there's a whole lot of costs associated with running a business that a regular employee isn't going to see. And I heard, like, when I first came on, you mentioned to get somebody asked that. Yeah, somebody asks you that, you fire them that day immediately. You have to. That's not their business. They didn't put money in to start it. You don't get to ask. You agree to work for a certain wage or commission. That is what you make. If you want to go start your own business, it's a free country. Go for it.
Yeah, it's the entitlement.
Yeah. The entitlement. And funny thing about workers' comp is, let's say you're hearing this podcast and you're a salon and you're like, I better get legit, and you go sign up to get your team on workers' comp, you're going to have to pay back insurance on them. Because I know when in the beginning, it was a very short amount of time at our Hollywood location, we were in between and switching companies. So when we went to the new company, we had to pay that back insurance on them. So if you've had an employee for years and you haven't paid it on them, they're going to collect that back.
Yeah. They collect a little up front just in case they don't believe you. And we believe you, but hey, you never know. So here, you got to pay for that. Yeah, they absolutely cover. They make sure they're covered. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. A couple other things that you said about, becoming legitimate, and also what employees or stylists that come in and start working at a place like my salon or Patricia's salon, and they start to learn, oh, I'm an employee, I have rights, I have entitlement. I've had people come in from being an independent contractor from a salon that was not set up legit, work for us for a short while. They don't necessarily work out with us. Maybe it's like a 2-week and we're like, it's not a right fit. And then they file for unemployment. And we get the paperwork and we're just like, what do you expect? Like, you need to look at this person's history. They've been doing hairs for years under the table. And they think that they're just going to collect unemployment from the 2 weeks that they were with us, and it doesn't work that way. So, because the reason why the laws have changed around our industry is because hair salons, I feel like salons have been taking advantage of their employees. This is meant to benefit the employee. This is all meant to give legitimacy and to set you up for success. But this whole industry has been so willy-nilly because it's a creative industry. There's so many creative industries that are like this. So obviously, like, they put legislation in place to give advantage to make sure that we're not taking advantage of our employees. I just did an interview with a girl yesterday, and she said she's a 1099 commission stylist, but her employer, her salon, makes her come to work at a set schedule. And they're not compensating. If her commission doesn't equal minimum wage, they're not compensating her for that. So here she is being taken advantage of, working for less than minimum wage.
They're breaking all kinds of rules there. Yeah.
And this is a very common thing, and this is a very known salon. This is a nice high-end salon here in LA. I've now heard about 5 top high-end salons doing this because I learned about it through the interviews. So yeah. I would love if we could highlight some of the things that employees are entitled to. Workers' comp, as mentioned, was just one of them, and that's an insurance. You can explain it better than I, but it's an insurance for if anything happens in the workplace. I even had someone come in and file a workers' compensation for a pre-existing condition that she had. And that was something because she was our new employee that they required us to cover for her. Yeah, there's workers' comp, and then there's other things such as you were talking about setting your future up for success, paying into unemployment, paying into Social Security. Can you highlight some of those things here?
So like workers' comp is an expense for the employer, but it is to protect the employees. California law basically says anybody who's on payroll, if you have employees, they don't say if you have employees, you have to have a workers' compensation policy to cover them in case of injury. Okay. It's such a problem in California because we have the most lawyers everywhere, most out of work lawyers too. That's why the rates here are so high. And everywhere you go, you see the ads, have you been hurt and all this, right? So it's such a problem that California developed their own workers' comp company. It's called State Fund. It's not State Farm, State Fund. So if none of the other private insurance companies will cover you for some of the higher risk industries like hairstyling, it's not considered really high risk, which is good. But like trucking, manufacturing, fumigation, some of those types of businesses, they can't qualify for a reasonable workers' comp policy. State Fund has to take them. Okay. And we're talking about, 17, 18% of whatever you're paying in wages. On top of that is workers' comp. So workers' comp is something that the employer has to have, but it definitely is to protect the employee in case they get hurt. Okay. You have also, every business should have business liability insurance. That's in case there's a slip and fall or something. That's not really for the employees. That's for your customers. Somebody does something, somebody burns somebody's hair. You have business liability insurance that covers that. That's for like your clients and things of that nature. Then you have for employees, one of the things that a lot of people get confused, which is a right that they have that every salon business owner should know about, in every business actually, is paid time off, PTO. Okay. A lot of times when people start, you have to have something in writing that explains to them what your company's PTO policy is, paid time off. Years ago, those of us that are older remember there used to be sick pay and holiday pay. Okay. And you couldn't use one or the other. So somebody was out of vacation days and they're like, I can't come to work. Can I use my vacation day because my sick days are gone? California law said, no, you don't have to pay them on that day. Okay, so we switched to a system here in California back around 2014 called paid time off policy. So as a business owner, when you hire people, you have to put in whatever your documents are when you onboard somebody, what your policy is. Is it uploading? Which means you're saying for the whole year, we're going to give you X amount of days, hours, 40 hours a year that you can miss for whatever, sick, whatever it may be, but you only get 40 hours. It's your company. You can give them more, but the minimum is 40 hours now, okay? Also, though, in your policy, you want to put in there whoever does your payroll can provide you with this stuff that you can sign up for their HR support services, and they can provide you templates that you can, make look like it's yours. But basically, it's all done by HR professionals. But how long do they have to work for you to be eligible for that PTO? So for most people, probationary period, 90 days, 6 months. So that's real important. It protects the employee and you, because if somebody works for 2 days and quits and says, hey, you have to pay me those 3 days of PTO that I'm entitled, or now it's actually 5 days. If they sign something that says you have to be here for 6 months before we pay you that, then great. You don't have to pay them that. You're going to win that labor board complaint. Okay. Also, you have to stipulate whether that paid time off is something that your company pays out in case somebody needs money. Most small businesses, you have to put it in writing that no, it's not a bank account, because some of the bigger companies out there, it is actually, they'll let an employee take money from that PTO, like almost like an account. You got to make sure as a small business owner, you stipulate in your HR manual that that's not the case. Okay. You're not a bank. It is hours that they get to use for when they miss time, and that they get paid on those days. You also get to stipulate whether it's holiday, what your company holidays are, and whether you want them to use PTO to cover that, or whether you're going to pay that additionally, or however you want to work it out. Okay. But for example, our company here, we have an accrual system where, depending on how many years they are, they can accrue paid time off. But it's a more complicated system. Again, we're accountants, so we have a system that calculated. For most small business owners, pick a number. It has to be more than 5. Could be up to 10. You don't want to get too crazy, but you can always change your policy and make sure that that PTO is printed on their pay stub. So every time they get paid, they can see how many hours they still have on PTO. That's a small rule here in California, but if you provide people with pay stubs and it doesn't show what their PTO is, that you can get in trouble in a labor board complaint. Okay, so that's another thing that a lot of business owners, sometimes smaller businesses, think, oh, it's no big deal. But you do have to have things like that. That PTO can cause you a lot of problems when you're hiring people, and there's a high turnover rate. In most small salons, it's coming and going. So you got to make sure you cover yourself on that. Okay. The other thing, as far as making sure that you have a schedule, making sure that they're clocking in and out for their breaks, clocking in and out for lunch. You have to. Okay. Most payroll companies now, like ADP, Gusto, all these have what they call time and attendance solutions. They're web-based, so you don't have to buy that stupid machine and have them clock in and have somebody add it up. You just have to have access for a computer for them to clock in. A lot of these bigger companies, if you have remote employees, they can clock in from their own phone. Okay, but making sure that people are sticking to it as an employer, that's a big thing. You got to make sure if somebody's going to have it, I don't clock in, I don't clock out. You got to sit them down. You got to give them a verbal warning, written warning, or walk them to the door, because the minute that starts happening, later they'll come back. Another big thing is overtime. California, big sticklers. So if somebody works more than 8 hours in a day, okay, then anything past that, it's time and a half, okay? That's overtime. If they work more than 40 hours in a week, that's also considered overtime. Okay, so I've had people say, "Can I just pay them?" I haven't worked 45 hours, but some days only work this and that. By the end of the week, if they exceed those 40 hours, you got to pay them the overtime. Don't mess around with it. That'll get you in a lot of trouble as well. Okay, you got to have a clearly defined schedules. Okay, because you get people who complain later that I'm not, so you have to put that schedule out. Make sure that people know, have something in writing. If it's the same schedule every day, just something in their position description that explains what hours. But I know with the salon, there's going to be different schedules. You guys have to cover other days or whatever it has. Those are things that have to be clear in writing. As a business owner, those are the things where I see people get in the most trouble. They think, well, do I really need workers' comp? I only have 2 people. Yes, you do. Because if you get caught without it, I think the fine per employee, if they're eligible.
And it doesn't matter if they're part-time or they're barely at work. Yeah. And even recently you told me with one of our employees that moved away, and he's only going to be working a total of a month out of the year. He comes in town 1 week every 3 months. You said he's still an employee. He still needs to be insured. He still needs to be treated as a W-2 employee, essentially. Because I thought, surely he could be 1099 now. If they're coming to work and this is their workplace where they're required to do their job and show up, and they're not doing anything outside of like the services that we provide, like educators would be different, then essentially they're an employee. And one thing that a lot of people, when I'm interviewing them and they're coming into our salon, they're surprised and are oblivious to what's coming off of their paycheck in those taxes. And they don't even understand that their employer is paying 50% of their taxes. And I think that's a huge asset, and that's really important. And they don't understand what it means to pay into their Social Security bank, what it means to pay into their unemployment. And this is all just, they think maybe this money just comes out of the blue and the government just provides all this free money, but no, it's coming out of our pockets as their employer. And that goes back to the advantages of being an employee.
Yeah, and I think what people don't realize is there's two parts to it, because they when you get a pay stub, they don't see your side of it. They're just seeing what's getting taken out of their check. And as an employer, you're only paying the payroll, but you're paying all the wages too. So if somebody makes $1,000 and all those taxes that were withheld and remitted is the term they use, sent by the payroll company, the IRS and EDD, that's not you keeping the money. You're just holding it and sending it. And in most situations, this is why I always tell people, do not try to do payroll on your own. Oh, I can do it through QuickBooks. If you don't know, if you didn't work at a payroll company before, hire a payroll company. Any of them, even if they make, are still better than you trying to do on your own, because what they're doing is they're impounding that money. They're holding it and then they're sending it. But once it's taken from your account, you're in the clear, okay? And they're also taking the employer side, which is the part the employees have no idea, which is roughly about 11.3%. Remember, there's a tax too for up to $7,000 per employee that they take. I think it's FICA. And that as well, they don't see it. Only the employer sees it on your side. So yeah, it seems like you're paying quite a bit to have them on payroll. And you're also ensuring that at the end of the year, they're getting a W-2, that they're a legit member of society. You're helping them out, and they don't sometimes see that. But that's the reality, is there's a lot of costs. The cost of running payroll is not cheap. The cost of, which is what you're paying the payroll company, not what they're impounding in taxes, but their fees. If you're using a time and attendance software, that gets, they charge for that. So all those costs that the employees don't see as an employer, you see it, but you have to do it. It's just like the insurance. It's just like anything else. Us here, for example, we have to pay a lot for software. We have to every year have everybody renew their certifications. We have to go to seminars all over the country. But if we don't do that, then we don't have a business. And then when somebody says, well, I think I should make more money, well, they don't realize how much we're putting out to make sure that they're in a position to do their jobs well without them having to worry about, and we have different types of insurances in our industry too that nobody sees, right? So it's real important that people understand that the employer side, when you're a business owner, the employee's not necessarily going to see it. It's good for them to remind them that, yeah, look, this is a W-2 employee position that you're hiring. And if they really are against it, don't try to make that person fit into your culture.
Yeah.
Don't hire them, okay? That's what I tell people. I've probably fired over 1,000 people in my life. And I always say they're going to be great, just not here. Let them go be great somewhere else. Because if they're not a fit, they're not a fit. And you do get people that can be negative in every type of industry. You got to find those people, walk them to the door, and have people with the right mindset and attitude. Because most normal people don't want to really worry about keeping a P&L and stressing about the stuff a business owner has to stress. They just want to make their money and go live their lives. And that's fine. That's where being on payroll, they're able to do that.
I have a question. So there is a salon coach obviously in our industry that is recommending 1099ing your team. But the way this person does it is that each team member has their own LLC. Yeah. Is that something that is legal, or is that like a workaround? I'm curious to and he supplies the color. They come to work every day. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, he's completely wrong. Right? And I deal with business consultants all the time, where they're like the loan guys for anytime you get a loan. They talk fast. They think they know what they're talking about. They don't. Some consultants do know what they're talking about.
I've tried every angle with Omar, and he won't let me do it. So yes, I'd love to hear this.
Let me explain where his thinking is and why that doesn't work. One, they're still employees because he still has them in the location. Two, where's the money going through? And let's face it, years ago, the reason that people were able to get away with more in your industry is because everybody paid in cash, right? We're talking about 30 years ago, right? Even probably into the early 2000s. How much cash do you guys actually get now? Not much, right? Especially a higher end. No one's going to walk in there with $1,000 in cash. They put it on the card. I've been over there at Hair Boss Salon. I put it on the card. Yep, they push the button. And so there isn't a whole lot of cash to play with anymore. But that's why years ago they could get away with it because money wasn't going into an actual bank account. Here's the money when nobody saw it. It's not a good way of doing business because ultimately, at some point, you got to show income for the things you want to do in your life. It's a shortcut that ultimately never works long term. But the reason the problem with the LLC is you still have all the other tests, the Borello test, the control. Where's the money going through? Okay. When you set somebody up with an LLC, what most people don't know is an LLC does not have its own tax structure. Okay. You have to elect it. Right there, you'll lose half the people. Because if you elect a single member LLC, you're being treated as a sole proprietor, Schedule C on your taxes. So we're back to the self-employment tax problem, right? If you set up as an S corp, which you'd still be in violation of the labor rules. But let's say somebody did that. Now they got to go set up their own payroll so that they can pay themselves through that corporation and incur all those costs, which is still way more than having to have them withhold your taxes. Okay, so it doesn't work for the person getting the 1099. The money's still going through that main business because you're not going to sit there and have them take the payment and then give you the money. That's not going to work. You'll never get the money that way. So it's a bad thing that he's consulting people to do this, but I don't doubt there's business consultants everywhere. They think that they know everything. It's like if somebody asks me a legal question, I'm going to refer you to a lawyer. You got to know what you do know and don't know. His job is consulting on how to increase sales revenue, how to do that because he knows that about that industry. Great. I don't claim I know how to increase your revenue at a hair salon. I can tell you the tax part. That's what I stick to, right? But no, he's completely incorrect. Setting up an LLC is a way to try to circumvent the system, but ultimately they're still going to end up with a 1099. It's still going to get reported as income on their individual taxes, still subject to 15.3% self-employment tax. And if the labor board comes, they're going to be like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. They're going to look further than that. It's like a kid's way of trying to get around an adult problem.
Thank you for sharing that with me. He's a great coach, but I'm like, that does not sound legal to me. It sounds still like misclassification. And I think giving out misinformation when you truly don't understand the laws and like trying to find workarounds, like everything sounds great until it comes to a point where someone tries to file unemployment or you get audited and then you're in big trouble.
This is different in the trucking industry. For a while, what they were doing, these bigger companies, they'd bring in drivers. Most of them didn't even speak English. And they'd have somebody set them up with an LLC or a corp, but usually an LLC. And then they'd have another company that would finance the truck for them. And then when the money would come in from the thing, they would take what they're being paid for and they deduct the workers' comp, the cost of the truck, everything. And the driver doesn't know any better. He's just happy he has a truck to drive. Well, they got busted. A couple of these companies that were doing it at a larger scale all got busted. People went to prison for it because they were trying to circumvent workers' comp laws. Enough drivers got upset. Hey, what do you mean I owe $100,000? I don't want to work for you anymore. Well, you bought a truck. Here, you signed here. The guy didn't even know what he's signing. So that's a more exaggerated version of what this guy's advising. But trust me, that scam's been around for years. They're onto it. You're not going to get past any of the tax agencies by telling people, set up your own LLC and I'll pay you that way. It's just not going to work.
Well, I think all of this information was so amazing and things are clear. 1099s in the salon industry are just a no-go. You can't do it. It's not great for the stylist and it's not great for the employer.
That's the other thing. If you pay them commission only, you're violating labor laws because they're really an employee. You have to pay them a base salary. Now, if you want to work out some sort of draw where that takes care of, you start getting into stuff. But I always tell people, if they're there, you got to pay them. You have to. I'll give you an example. My girlfriend, she's a florist, and that's another industry where there's a lot of, hey, can you pay me? There's a lot of it. Her daughter went to help out for a couple of days during Valentine's Day, and I asked, hey, did the guy, did your boss put her on payroll? No, he just gave her cash. Okay, well, that's why your boss is trying to sell the business. He knows what's coming. Okay, and whoever buys that business is going to have to inherit those types of problems. And again, it's rampant in a lot of different industries. But I use that as an example. I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. That's eventually, if she doesn't know any better, she'll go file for unemployment because she worked for 2 days. Boom, it's over for him. And I just had one guy, his own cousin put in an unemployment claim on him because he wanted to collect, food stamps or something. Luckily, he did listen to me from the beginning. He has the guy on payroll. And good, he's covered. He doesn't have to, but he goes, my own cousin. I'm like, do it right, because trust me, at some point, someone, even if you do everything nice, someone's going to have an axe to grind. That's just how people are. So if you're covered, you can sleep good at night.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely do. Like if you don't have clients, you can't come to the salon.
Right?
You just can't.
Yeah.
Because you do have to pay them. And I don't think a lot of salon owners know the legalities of that too. They have these stylists sitting in the back room waiting for walk-ins, not paying them minimum wage, which is a huge employment violation and can get you in a massive amount of trouble. They think, well, they're on commission. If their commission, equals out to no, you have to pay them if they're sitting in your business.
The only position, and it doesn't apply in your industry, that you are exempt from the Fair Labor Board and Standards Act of the United States is salespeople. Okay, they're the only ones. But in California, they're still on salary. Like if you go to a car lot, those car salesmen are all still drawing minimum wage salaries. Because they're there, they can't leave. If somebody's a salesperson and they're working from home, that could maybe be an independent contractor, but if they have control, they have to report to the office, they have certain hours, and that's usually what you have to do. They're an employee, and that's just that. So always remember, if they're doing something different, like you have to hire a maintenance person, or you're hiring somebody to come in and do the cleaning or IT work, that's not an employee. That's a person that has their own business. That's a 1099 all day, get a W-9, because that's not what you're doing, right? But the minute they're doing what you're doing, more than likely they're going to be classified as an employee. Just play it straight. You'll have a better business. You'll have less problems. And ultimately, the whole goal of starting a business is not to turn around and lose it later. It's to grow the business so that you're able to get where you want to in your life. And so someone who wants to do that, you have to have that mindset. And what's hard is sometimes you're dealing with employees, and let's face it, they don't all have that mindset. But you got to find people that fit within your corporate culture. If they don't fit, you can't make them fit. Let them go. That's my advice.
And if you're a salon that's going to convert and switch over and get legit and make your employees W-2 employees, you have to assess the percentage you're paying them. It most likely can't be the same, because that will run you out of business. Because now if you're already paying like a higher rate because you're not paying into their payroll taxes or their workers' comp or covering all their business expenses, that's a sure way to drive your business into zero profit or being in the red. So I think it's important before making this big change to do an overview of what all your expenses are and to find out what your fixed bottom line is for the percentage that you're paying your team. And I think this is kind of going to come as a shock to a lot of people, but it's going to level out our industry, because right now we have, I want to say, like, not a lot of us in California that are running legit salons based on the law. And then you have the majority out there running things willy-nilly. And this is just creating some discrepancies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to adjust. You can't pay the highest commission, because they also are getting a steady paycheck, being taken care of. We have everything here proper. You don't have to worry about next month we're going out of business. Your paycheck's not clearing. Those are all things that a good employee has to understand. And you got to find people that get that. It's hard because they're hearing their friends say, I do it this way. I had a client recently, she did eyelashes. She's like, well, I don't want to pay payroll taxes. Okay, well, the problem is if you do it the way you want to do it, you're going to end up with a big bill at the end of the year. And you'll see, you'll come back and you'll say, hey, you were right. Because the reality is, even her as a business owner, she's not going to have the money at the end of the year. She's just not making enough. So it's better for her to be on payroll and pay into the system. And at least at the end of the year, she wasn't even having to pay anything in taxes, which is good. She can focus on what she needs to. You touched on a really good point. You have to adjust your commissions to what's reasonable. And that's why, like in the construction industry, that's why they do go after them to make sure they have workers' comp, because you can really lowball it, especially with everything that's gone on with these fires. The board here in California that licenses contractors, if you're caught paying somebody as a subcontractor that doesn't have a contractor's license and you don't put them on payroll, they will pull your license if you get caught. That's how serious it is, because for years people were doing it, and they still have people that sometimes do stuff underhanded. But if you get caught without workers' comp or people not on payroll that should be, they will pull your license. You will not have a business. They had to do that to level the playing field for the people that are just hiring people outside of Home Depot. So who knows what the future will look like for your industry. Hopefully it doesn't get to that, but they could, because why? You guys have licenses. They could pull people's licenses. So something to consider, but definitely I urge everybody, do things the right way. I've never had anybody call me and say, I regret I followed all the rules that you told me to. But I've had a lot of calls from people that say, hey, can I come back as a client? I have a mess. I need you to fix it. I get at least one or two of those calls probably a month. And sometimes we can't. They're bad clients and we're like, no, we're good. Go have somebody else help you out.
It's more expensive to do it the wrong way and fix it than it is to just hire the right people and do it the right way.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of your information. Where can people find you and get a hold of you if they'd like to use your services?
Well, you can go to our website, but basically, usually everybody just calls me. My phone number is 562-293-8012. We have a website, taxcousa.com. But I tell everybody, just call me. That's my mobile number. Or you can email me directly, omar@taxco.us. We provide a free consultation. And I've worked with Lena for years. She'll tell you, I'll shoot you straight. I'll make sure we take care of you. And most importantly, that we'll set you up so that you have a business, not a liability. And that's what most people want. They want to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take this somewhere. So best way to probably get a hold of me quickly is just email omar@taxco.us. We're over here in Long Beach. We've been here probably about 8 years. And before that, we were in Bellflower. But we handle clients anywhere in Southern California. I even have some in different states. But usually the first consultation, be happy to come to your business and sit down with you at no cost, take a look at what's going on. I always tell people, I've seen everything bad that can happen. So if you're just not sure, you think I'm doing things wrong, you probably still don't break the top 100 of the messes I've dealt with. We also deal with sales tax. We do the sales tax for you. Audits as well, because those do happen. But hopefully the goal is we set you up right. Even if you do get audited, then you should come out unscathed.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Lena, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think this is going to be a really great episode. I think there's so much information here, and I feel like this is definitely one of the areas where a lot of salon owners are lacking. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's salon owners that are lacking. It's also the lack of information that I think employees have for their employee rights. They just don't know.
Mhm.
They have no idea, especially here in California. Things are so willy-nilly with industries and it's so oversaturated. And I'm somebody who worked in this industry as a stylist before I ever owned my own salon, and I never knew any of this stuff, and I never utilized my employee rights, and I was never legit. And I always just thought this wasn't a real career or lucrative or something I could take serious, because it just seemed like flexible side cash, and I always had another job on the side the first 10 years of my career, just so I can have a paycheck and be filing taxes. But now I'm learning you can have a lucrative career and be legitimate as a hairstylist, but you have to find a salon that's doing things right by the book.
Yep. Absolutely. Well put, Lena. Well, thank you everybody for having me on. It was really great talking with everybody, and Lena, we'll be talking soon, okay?
Will be.
Pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevate podcast. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. The Elevate podcast is hosted by me, Patricia Nowakowski, and is produced by Opulent Beauty Pro. To receive my free business guides, visit opulentbeautypro.com/free or click the link in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at Opulent Beauty Pro or at Patricia_Nowakowski_OBS. If you love this show, please consider subscribing, and we will see you next week.